In the last episode, we heard about chemsex, where we spoke to Pank, a man who had previously been involved with chemsex, about his own experiences. And we heard from London Friend, an LGBT plus charity, about what chemsex is, what problems people can experience from it, and how to ask for help. And if you've not heard it already, it's worth a download. So this episode is all about setting straight some myths, and we're going to be getting educated about HIV, from prevention to diagnosis, HIV management and medication.
And we have two experts in HIV in the studio, our resident expert, HIV and sexual health specialist, Dr. Stuart Flanagan, and a huge welcome to the studio to new voice to the podcast, the wonderful Matthew Hodson, Executive Director of one of the leading HIV charities, NAM. Welcome to Sex Talk, Matthew and Dr. Stuart.
Hey.
Thank you.
I feel like we need
all of that. Hello.
Cheers, guys. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good to be back and good to see Matthew.
Yeah.
It's great to be with you.
Cheers.
Now, Matthew, it's your first time on Sex Talk. Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us.
Be gentle with me.
Can't promise. But tell us a bit about yourself and the work you do.
As you said, I'm Matthew. I work for NAM. We provide resources particularly for people living with HIV, but also for their healthcare providers. For audiences internationally, we have a website called AIDS Map, and we also do kind of print resources, and we host meetings and things like that.
Matthew, for people that aren't familiar with those acronym NAM, what does that stand for?
Oh, well, it's one of those kind of old-fashioned things. It doesn't really stand for anything anymore. It used to stand for National AIDS Manual, because when we were set up, it was a ring binder folder of information which we would share with people. But now we're international, and fortunately now we're much more often talking about HIV rather than AIDS, and most of our work is online, so we're no longer a manual. But apart from that, the name absolutely fits us. What the main thing we do is we provide support for people living with HIV so that they feel really empowered in their conversations that they may have with their healthcare providers. Also really key to the work that we do, and I think this is like kind of really key to what I care about, is we want to really challenge stigma. And I think part of the way we do that is through information, because there's a lot of really good news out there at the moment. If we look at life expectancy, for example, people with HIV, people like me, we have a normal life expectancy now. And there's this wonderful thing which we're starting to talk about, which is that when we are treated, we're no longer an infection risk to our sexual partners. And that's really at the core of a lot of people's fear of us, is like, when they meet someone with HIV, like, oh, am I going to become infected? And, do I have to disinfect everything and throw away all the plates? And it's like, well, actually, we can even have sex, even without a condom, and we'll still be okay. I mean, how amazing is that?
Sure. Yeah. Come a long way.
Yeah. We're going to chat more about that on the show. And Dr. Stuart, for those who haven't heard Sex Talk before, could you just explain a little bit more about what you do, please?
Yeah, so I'm a specialist in sexual health and HIV medicine. I work in a large clinic in London. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited to talk about HIV in particular, because it's one of my passions is, as Matthew said, talking about the new information that we have about HIV. But the big challenge ahead is still the stigma. And like Matthew says, getting lots of information and breaking down those barriers of ignorance is really what the challenges are ahead for us in the next few years.
As Dr. Stuart just said, prevention, testing and treatment for HIV has changed massively since the 80s. But unfortunately, there is still a large amount of stigma which still exists around the virus.
Yeah, so according to the People Living with HIV Stigma Survey, which happened in 2015, 19% of the HIV positive people in the UK surveyed had experienced being gossiped about. 20% said they had experienced sexual rejection, and 9% had been verbally abused because of their diagnosis.
I mean, how awful is that?
Well, dealing with HIV anyway is probably something that people that have just been diagnosed worry about. And then to lump this on top is definitely not okay. And
Absolutely.
That's why these guys are here to sort it out. Let's do it, guys. Come on.
Okay, we've got this one. Come on.
It's Sex Talk's ambition and aim to try and help end the stigma around HIV and give our listeners the facts, which is why we have invited you two amazing guests to the studio today.
Okay, so let's start trying to tackle this problem. Hopefully we can reach a lot of people that will go and download this. So what misconceptions do you both hear over and over again in your work that you would like to address?
I think it's got to be the one about the transmission of HIV. I mean, I think that is so core, and I think for people like me living with the virus, I mean, for all our lives as diagnosed positive people, we've heard you're diseased, you're unclean, you're a threat. And then this wonderful news that actually, when we are treated, when we are virally suppressed, which is the aim of HIV treatment, that is no longer the case.